Imagine standing in Sarajevo in 1993. You're in a neighborhood that not long ago was solidly middle class. Your neighbor, once a banker before the war, approaches you quietly. In his hands is a gold necklace. He's not asking for food, not medicine. He's offering it in exchange for a single pack of cigarettes and 3 disposable lighters. He isn't confused. He's desperate. The necklace is genuine gold, easily worth 2 months of salary in a functioning economy. But inside a city under siege, with no electricity, no clean water, no food distribution, on that gold has no practical use. The lighters, on the other hand, mean survival. Fire for cooking, fire for warmth, fire to boil water and avoid deadly diseases like dysentery. This isn't a hypothetical scenario. It was recorded by Selko Begovic, a man who survived more than a year during the Bosnian siege. And one observation from his experience should unsettle anyone who believes financial assets alone ensure safety. He watched people holding gold slowly starve while others, those with useful skills, tools, and connections, stayed alive. Conventional preparedness advice often emphasizes precious metals. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. I've said that myself. But when you examine real economic collapses, not theory, not speculation, but documented outcomes, gold ranks far below something else entirely. Skills, land, tools, community. What's sometimes called the Amish Hedge. By the end of this breakdown, you'll understand why $1,000 invested in the right practical assets can protect a family when $10,000 in gold bullion cannot. And this pattern isn't rare. It has repeated itself across countries, decades, and political systems. Every time the evidence points in the same direction. First, currency collapse happens far faster than people expect. In Bosnia, the shift from a functioning cash economy to full barter didn't take years. It took months. Selko documented that during the early phase, people still attempted to use money. Within weeks, prices exploded, 20 times higher, 30 times higher, sometimes 100. A pack of cigarettes that cost 1.5 German marks outside the war zone sold for 40 marks inside the city. Venezuela offers a modern example. From 2016 onward, inflation exceeded 1 million%. The bolivar became so worthless that citizens nicknamed it the dead bolivar. The government responded by banning large denomination bills and giving people 72 hours to exchange their money before it became illegal. 3 days, entire life savings rendered useless on a government deadline. Argentina followed the same trajectory between 1998 and 2002. The economy shrank by 28%. More than half the population fell below the poverty line. Those who kept savings in pesos saw them effectively wiped out. Different countries, same sequence, same outcome. Second, when money fails, economies revert to barter, and only utility matters. In Venezuela today, fishermen in the coastal area of Patanimo trade fish directly for rice, bananas, and plantains carried in by people walking from nearby towns. One fisherman explained it simply: money no longer buys anything, so food is the only medium that works. Farmers travel hundreds of kilometers to Caracas carrying sacks of bananas, cassava, yams, and lemons, not to sell for cash, but to exchange directly for flour, rice, or pasta. In coffee-growing regions, hardware stores accept coffee beans as payment. 300 kilograms of coffee can be exchanged for 200 liters of gasoline. Coffee works as currency because it is standardized, consumable, and immediately useful. This is economic reversion. When modern systems fail, societies fall back to pre-industrial exchange. In that environment, gold offers no functional advantage. You can't eat it. You can't burn it. You can't clean water with it or treat an infected wound. But the person who can grow food, fix machinery, or supply medicine becomes indispensable. Third, the Great Depression confirmed that land and skills outweigh everything else. Farmers suffered during the Depression. Crop prices collapsed so severely that some burned corn for fuel because it was cheaper than coal. But farmers who owned productive land still had a critical advantage. They could feed themselves. Records from rural Iowa show families growing large gardens, canning fruit, producing milk and cream, raising chickens for eggs and meat, and baking bread from bulk flour. Clothing was sewn from feed sacks. Cash income often fell to zero, yet they survived. Urban workers had no such buffer. In Dubuque, Iowa, over 2,000 workers lost their jobs between 1927 and 1934. Even those who remained employed faced hunger because they had no way to produce food. One viewer summarized it perfectly. His grandfather survived the Depression not because of savings or gold, but because he owned 4 acres of land and had carpentry and painting skills. World War II victory gardens scaled this principle nationally. By 1943, more than 20 million gardens produced 10 billion pounds of food, 40% of all vegetables consumed in the United States. Two-thirds of these gardens were in cities and suburbs. By 1944, most gardeners weren't motivated by patriotism, but by economic necessity. The math is straightforward. Land generates food, income, and shelter value regardless of monetary conditions. Academic data confirms this. During the 2008-2009 financial crisis, farmland values rose 17%, while the S&P 500 fell 46%. Over multiple decades, farmland produced positive returns in nearly every period when stocks declined. This isn't speculation, it's insurance. Fourth, skills became survival capital, and the list was remarkably consistent. During the Depression, people earned by producing tangible value: fishing, preserving food, growing and selling berries, sewing and repairing clothes, butchering animals, making baskets and quilts, shoveling snow, running lunch wagons. Every activity addressed basic human needs: food, clothing, shelter, health. Skills related to medicine, mechanics, construction, and food preservation commanded the highest value. Doctors, nurses, and dentists remained in demand even when currency was unreliable. People paid them with goods and services instead of money. A skilled carpenter represents an asset that cannot be locked in a vault because it lives in the person. Gold, by contrast, produces nothing on its own. Fifth, Selco's account reveals what actually held value during total collapse. Ammunition ranked highly because it enabled hunting and defense, though Selco warned against trading it freely. Any weapon sold today could be used against you tomorrow. Hygiene items proved enormously valuable. Soap, toothpaste, feminine hygiene products, and bleach traded at extraordinary rates. Bleach could purify hundreds of gallons of water. A bar of soap, once worth 50 cents, traded for a dozen eggs. Medicine was priceless. Antibiotics, pain relievers, and first aid supplies saved lives when hospitals collapsed. But the most counterintuitive insight was this. Selco recommended owning 1,000 disposable lighters instead of a fuel-powered generator. Generators are loud, fuel-hungry, maintenance-heavy, and attract theft. Lighters are silent, portable, inexpensive, refillable, and distributed. Losing a few doesn't eliminate your ability to make fire. Selco refilled lighters from a propane tank and traded them for food and supplies. Fire meant cooking, heat, light, non-negotiable needs in a siege. Gold and jewelry, meanwhile, traded poorly during the crisis. Armed groups often took them at the value of a single can of soup. Precious metals only regained relevance after stability returned, too late to matter for survival. Sixth, Venezuela proves this isn't history. It's happening now. One woman grows vegetables in her backyard specifically to barter for rice, sugar, and milk. She noted that her lifestyle now mirrors how her grandparents lived a century ago. A fisherman explained that he hasn't visited the city center in years because wages no longer justify the effort. Barter is more efficient. In Zimbabwe's collapse, black market medicine surged. A single course of antibiotics could be worth weeks of income. A bottle of medicine held more real value than silver or gold. If this challenges your assumptions about financial security, that's the point. This is Evermark Finance, a financial forensics, not theory. Seventh, community networks determine who survives. Large-scale studies covering over 300,000 participants show that strong social relationships increase survival odds by 50%, an effect comparable to quitting smoking. Selco emphasized that most trades occurred through trusted connections built before the war. Trust replaced formal markets. Communities with shared norms, like Amish groups, churches, and mutual aid networks, coordinate resources far more effectively than isolated households. Social capital becomes economic infrastructure. Eighth, the data dismantles gold's reputation as collapse insurance. Gold doesn't produce food, income, or services. It depends entirely on someone else wanting it. During early collapse, people want necessities, not metal. Farmland volatility has been less than half that of stocks and lower than gold. During inflationary periods, farmland returns exceeded inflation itself. The warning signs are visible globally. Venezuela, Lebanon, Turkey, and the United States faces record debt, expanding deficits, and rising interest costs. For the first time in history, every major currency is fiat. So what actually works? The Amish Hedge combines 5 elements: productive land, even small gardens; practical skills, food, repair, medical basics; useful goods, medicine, tools, hygiene, fire; strong community networks; limited precious metals for post-crisis optionality, only after the first 4 are secured. Across Bosnia, Venezuela, the Great Depression, and modern recessions, the conclusion is consistent. Survival depends on production, skill, and trust, not financial instruments. The question isn't whether systems fail. The question is whether you prepare before they do. Now diversify before you're forced to.